What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video here on my YouTube channel. Today it is part number 4 of the Every TV Show I Have Seen tier list. This is a project I started a few weeks back here as a celebration for my 100th video. Today we got another portion of this tier list knocked out for you guys here with part number 4. Of course, as many of you know, 700 plus different TV shows on this tier list, which is absolutely insane. Let's just dive right back into it here. If you need to catch up on the first 3 parts, of course, those will be linked in the description as always here. But let's dive right back into it with I Want to Marry Harry. This is another one of those, short-lived reality shows here, this time on Fox. That only lasted a single season here, understandably so, because it was not a very good show whatsoever. A dating show. This guy looks like Prince Harry, allegedly, and all these girls fawned over him, so that was the entire show. Yeah. Not really enough material to stretch out more than one season, as you can imagine. Next up, we have iCarly and iCarly 2021 here. I'm going to put both of them up in the God tier. You guys already know. Absolutely love me some iCarly. I've talked about it plenty of times on the channel there. I've been rewatching some of the older episodes in preparation for the new season, of course, which is really exciting. And season 2 so far of the reboot there, I think, has been absolutely fantastic. Really love what they're doing with Spencer right now. Some of his storylines I think are hilarious as well. But yeah, you guys know me. I mean, iCarly is a childhood favorite of mine. Cannot go any lower than God tier. Ice and Coco here, a daytime talk show hosted by Ice-T and his wife Coco here. I'm going to throw it in the meh tier. It's okay. Again, it was very, very short-lived, only a few weeks actually, because daytime, syndicated shows air every single day. It only lasted for 15 episodes, which is quite short for a daytime talk show, but it had its moments. If you're a big Ice-T fan like me, it's worth hunting down some of those clips. Icons here on G4. I'm going to put this in the good tier. I had a lot of fun with this documentary style about different video game creators and developers and such. Essentially just icons in the industry, of course. It's one of the first G4 shows that I remember really, really enjoying. I've always been a big documentary guy, so that was a show that was right up my alley. Yeah, very nostalgic for me as well there. Identity here with Penn Jillette as the host with this one, a game show where you basically have to identify these different people, if they're a doctor, if they're a contortionist, you have all these different occupations here, and the contestant had to identify who was who based on subtle clues and context clues. It's okay. It's a better idea on paper than I think it was executed, and there's been some shows that have kind of come in and tried to do the same style or the same format with varying degrees of success there. So I'm just going to put it in the meh tier. Sad World here. Man, if you are not tuned in to Sad World, I feel bad for you, my friend, because this show is fantastic here. This is Noah Monk and his web series that he does with his brother Ethan. Of course, Noah Monk from iCarly. He played at Gibby back in the day, iconic role. But this is what he does now on his YouTube channel, Sad World. Absolutely fantastic stuff. It's very, very difficult to explain, so it's really just something you got to see for yourself. But trust me, it is God tier worthy. Following that, we got Booba here. I'm going to put Booba in, it's kind of between bad and meh, honestly, but because, it's probably not something I would watch nowadays, I'm going to put it in the bad tier here. Just a really goofy show, just really, silly, obviously meant for very young kids there, but just, like I said, not something I would really check out nowadays as an adult here. Hellcats, I'm going to put this in the bad tier. I saw, 10 minutes worth of an episode, and that was enough for me, so bad tier. Anna and Christina's Grocery Bag here, very, very underrated cooking show here from Canada. Anna and Christina, pretty well known in Canadian, kind of cooking culture there. I'll put it in, yeah, I'll go good tier. It's kind of between good and great for me, but it's just not something I watch all the time, so I think good tier is fair. Essentially, they just had these, recipes that they were testing from these cookbooks, and then the entire point of the show was, would you recommend the cookbook or not? So kind of interesting how they formatted that, but yeah, just kind of fun to see. You know, they're not the most professional chefs in the world, so kind of fun to see their chemistry together. But yeah, good show all in all. Impractical Jokers and Impractical Jokers After Party here, the spin-off series, of course. Well, you guys know me, I love Impractical Jokers. After Party is okay. You know, it's not the best show, it's more like a talk show. I'm going to put that one in the great tier, but for sure, the OG is going all the way up in God tier, another one that I just cannot get enough of. This is kind of one of those shows that you either love or hate, honestly, because some people really, really do not like the show whatsoever, but I absolutely love it. I think, where did it go here? I lost it, there it is. Yeah, I absolutely love it. The four guys, Sal, Murr, Q, and Joe, all have incredible chemistry with one another. You can really tell that they've been, you know, lifelong friends for as long as they have, since high school. They just have really, really organic, you know, chemistry with one another. They play off each other very well. The challenges, of course, get more and more ridiculous each season, which is always fun. There's so many memes from the show as well. But yeah, just the community, the fan base behind it definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Indebted here with Franz Drescher. This was kind of her comeback show following The Nanny, of course, back in the 90s. I'm going to put it in meh. Pretty forgettable, pretty boring. Just not really much to say on this one, honestly. Siberia here, super, super underrated, man. This is another one that's going to go all the way up in the God tier. Probably my favorite, like, sci-fi or fantasy type drama of all time there, next to The Walking Dead. Yeah, super, super, super creative. Very, very overlooked, man. The fan base with this one's still pretty ride or die all this time later, which is impressive considering how old the show is. But yeah, if you can manage to find it, it's on Tubi right now. You can find it for free, which is really, really cool. So highly recommend if you're looking for just a really interesting sci-fi fantasy type drama show. In Living Color here, definitely one of the most iconic sketch comedy shows of all time there. Really was one of those shows that put Fox on the map and had so many iconic you know, cast members for it that would go on to do really, really great things. I don't watch it as much as some of these other sketch shows, but just for its legacy, I'm going to slip it into the great tier there. I mean, it's so prevalent in comedy, it's so prevalent in, you know, African-American culture, and, you know, a lot of the shows that would come afterwards would kind of take inspiration from bits that they did on in Living Color. So just for the impact it had, definitely great tier is where it's belonging. OMG Insider, another one of these tabloid, you know, celebrity type shows. I'm just going to put it in meh, pretty forgettable. Inspector Gadget, another one, honestly, that I gotta put in the meh tier. The animation style on this one is a little bit kind of hit or miss for me. I'm definitely a bigger fan of the live-action movies they did with, like, Matt Broderick later on, and French Stewart. Those are, you know, some of my childhood favorites there, but the TV show was just kind of, you know, average. Didn't really stand out to me much. Intelligence here, get the fuck out of here. Fuck this show, man. Talked about this show so many times on this channel. I absolutely cannot stand it, man. Just on an objective level, super unfunny, like super uncreative, man. No chemistry with this cast. But just, you know, on a personal level too, like, it just has no value in any sort of way as far as, like, compared to any other sitcom that I could watch. Why would I waste my time with this fucking garbage? So bottom of the barrel, get it the fuck out of here. Fuck Intelligence. Intervention here. This is one of those shows that Matt has, like, kind of introduced me to and kind of turned me on to. I'll put it in the good tier because it is pretty interesting. It's pretty fascinating at times. It can be, like, a little over the top with how some of these people's situations can be and, like, how desperate they can get. So it's not, you know, the most comfortable watch ever. There's definitely some parts where you know, you feel really bad for these people and it's hard to kind of see their situations, but at the same time it can be very rewarding, and, you know, they do celebrate when these people do eventually get help and such, so that's always nice. But yeah, all in all, I'll say good tier for that. Iron Chef America, one of the OG Food Network competition shows here, even before Chopped and Cutthroat Kitchen and, many of the others that we have talked about thus far. I'm going to put it in the great tier here. Legacy-wise, it probably does belong in A1, but I just haven't seen it in such a long time, so can't really say, you know, for me, you know, as far as how often I watch it, if it belongs up there. So at least great tier though, for sure. I mean, so many Food Network chefs and you know, celebrity personalities on this one that would go on to be just huge names, and you know, instead of the culinary industry, like Michael Simon was on this, and Bobby Flay, Kat Cora. They've all been kind of Food Network staples for a long time and got their start on Iron Chef America there. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Every It's Always Sunny fan is going to scream in horror when I place this in the bad tier, because this is just not a show for me. I respect this show. I cannot, you know, give it enough credit for being the longest running sitcom of all time. That's a huge accomplishment and absolutely fantastic. The fan base for this one, super, super into it. Ride or die for sure, but I just can't get into it myself. It's just not a show for me, you know, and that's totally fine. You know, if it's your cup of tea, that's totally cool. But for me, I just don't really like the humor on it. I think the cast is a little bit hit or miss. I do like them in a lot of other projects that I've seen, but for some reason here, I just feel like they're kind of mismatched. They don't really work as well as they should. So just a lot of negatives that turn me off from It's Always Sunny personally. iZombie here, CW show. I saw like a third of an episode like 10 years ago. I can't really say I remember much from it, so I'll just put it in the med tier. Jane the Virgin, on the other hand, another CW show, I think is fantastic here. This one is definitely going to go up in A1 tier. That pilot episode, man, is pretty phenomenal. There's a reason why this one has gotten so much love and so much attention since its debut, because it really is fantastic. Yellow's Marble Run here, YouTube show hosted by a what is it, like Netherlands? They're in the Netherlands, so they're Dutch, and they're just these you know, the small team of marble enthusiasts. And it might sound stupid, but it's essentially based on the Olympics here. So they do these little challenges, they do these little races here with teams of marbles, and they have different themes to them. So they'll have one team representing, like, you know, a water-based theme, the Oceanics, or they have one that's you know, the Chocolatiers, and they're you know, these brown marbles that they use. But really, really interesting. It has kind of this you know, like almost spoof or like parody type of vibe to it at times, where they're kind of going over the top with how much they allude to the idea of it being like the Olympics and such. But it's kind of another one that you kind of have to just see for yourself to really get the full picture of, but it's a lot of fun. Definitely going A1 tier. Savage Speeders all the way, man. If you're not a Savage Speeder fan, click off the video. I don't trust you. If you root for the Green Ducks, click off the video. Get the fuck out of here. Green Ducks can kiss my ass. Jeopardy here. Absolutely adore Jeopardy. I mean, it's not something I watch every single day, but I have a huge amount of respect for it. I'm going to put it up in the great tier. I do think so. Personally, like, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but at least here in Detroit, the local affiliate that plays Jeopardy always has it paired with Wheel of Fortune, and between those two, I'll take Jeopardy any day. I don't really like Wheel of Fortune in the sense that it's just so, like, it's a show that your grandma would watch, you know. The median age for it is 75, but with Jeopardy, it feels like it has a little bit more skill to it. You know, it's kind of fun to play along with at times. Of course, the whole debacle not too long ago with the hosts after Alex Trebek passed, you know, that stirred up a lot of controversy. Of course, a lot of people don't really like the fact that Maya Bialik is hosting it right now, and you know, I think she's okay, but obviously no one will ever top Alex Trebek there. I mean, he was definitely the OG for a reason. So, but all in all, you know, I'd say a pretty solid game show there. Jerry Springer, that's here, pretty awful, honestly. I mean, all of those shows, like your Steve Wilkos, your Maury Povich, all those like daytime, you know, paternity type shows, honestly, are all kind of gonna go in the same boat here. So Matt here. Jimmy Kimmel, one of the worst late night talk shows of all time. Get it out of here. I mean, as much as I don't like a James Corden type, because he's like really over the top with how goofy it can be, I take that over Jimmy Kimmel because he just puts me to sleep, honestly. So get him out of here. Jimmy Neutron, I'm gonna say bad tier. I just never really was a Jimmy Neutron kind of kid growing up. I know like there's a pretty big fan base for it, but I can't get into it myself. Joanne Weir's cooking class, another of these culinary and cooking type shows, of course. I'm gonna say good tier. Sometimes she'd have like these, they would be guests, but they wouldn't be like celebrities or anything. They'd just be like normal people that she would teach how to cook. And sometimes it'd be really, really cringy to see like how low a bar these people had, because they've never cooked in their life, so they didn't even know the basics. So that was kind of funny to watch at times. But all in all, you know, she's pretty personable, and you know, they made some good stuff every now and then. So I'll say good tier at least. Joey, of course, the infamous spin-off to Friends there, starring Matt LeBlanc. Got to go bad tier, because, I mean, the legacy that it holds is just so negative and so cynical everyone has against it. So, yeah, I'm going bad tier here. Same with Johnny Test, honestly. I mean, back in the day, you'd be forgiven if you respected Johnny Test a little bit because it was so popular, but like in retrospect now, everyone has kind of concluded that it was a phase that we all had growing up watching Cartoon Network, and no one, you know, if you said seriously to someone that you're a fan of Johnny Test now, you'd be laughed out of the room. So again, can't really put this one too high here. I'm gonna say bad tier. Judge Steve Harvey. This show is fucking crazy, man. It's so dumb, but it can be fun at times. I'll put it in the good tier. It's been a surprise hit for ABC too, so gotta give him some respect there. But I mean, Steve Harvey in general is just pretty personable, and he can be a lot of fun. He can definitely go off the rails at times, and he does do that on this show, but he's essentially just mocking like all these, you know, courtroom shows like your Judge Joe Brown's, People's Court, Judge Judy, all of those, and he gives him, you know, the signature Steve Harvey twist there, and it can be a lot of fun if you're a Steve Harvey fan like me. So I'll say good tier at least. Just Shoot Me, probably the most average, like middle of the road sitcom I've ever seen, so definitely met tier. Kenan, not like that at all, definitely much better show. Big Kenan Thompson fan here, so for sure this one's gonna go pretty high. It's borderline A1 tier, but I just don't know if it has that, you know, level of popularity yet, or you know, level of impact yet, because it didn't really have that much of a fan base. People that have seen it really enjoy it, but there just hasn't been, you know, that many people latching onto it. So because of that, I'm gonna restrict it and put it in the great tier, but it's definitely borderline A1 because I really enjoyed it myself. Kevin Belton's Cookin' Louisiana here, another one of these stand and serve shows on PBS with Kevin Belton as the host here. He is very eccentric. He definitely is like very, you know, personable. He's very passionate about food and cooking and such, which is really fun. But watching too much of this, it gets pretty repetitive after a while. This is one of those shows that you can only watch for like a couple episodes at max, you know, and then you can go a while without seeing any more of it. So I'll put it in good tier. Kevin Can Fuck Himself here. Really interesting drama slash comedy from AMC here with Annie Murray from Schitt's Creek. You might know her from. I'm going to put this one at least in the great tier here. I think this show is very creative, very clever how it kind of implements the dramatic elements and the sitcom elements. It kind of goes back and forth between being, you know, this very cinematic, very dystopian almost type of drama show with, you know, these very crude, you know, camera angles, cinematography, all that stuff. And then you have the multi-cam sitcom elements to it as well with the laugh track, and it's very bright and preppy. So kind of the contrast between those two is really the whole gimmick of the show, and it's executed extremely well here. So very interesting to see their take on it for sure. Kevin Can Wait. I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on this one because this show was trying to just be the King of Queens 2.0. You know, well after that show had ended, this one in 2016 coming out, kind of doing what that one was trying to do. But as I talked about earlier, I absolutely love The King of Queens. I mean, this is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. So we're going Kevin Can Wait in the A1 tier. It's a ton of fun. I agree that season 2 is definitely not as good. Like, I mean, that's pretty much just a given if you've seen the show, because that's when they really tried to like go and make it officially like a 2.0, you know, King of Queens reboot with bringing in Leah Remini and such. Like, that just kind of got a little over the top, and by the end of it, like, I didn't really like the ending personally, and kind of the last stretch of episodes, maybe like the last like 6 or so episodes were just very repetitive, just didn't really have all that much going for them at that point. But at least season 1, I would say, still had a bit of that genuine, you know, Kevin James feel to it. If you're a big fan of him, like I am, then this is definitely going to be up your alley. So for sure, A1 tier for me. Key and Peele here, another sketch comedy show. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched like a full episode of it, but you can find the sketches on YouTube, of course, on Comedy Central's page there. I mean, we got to go great tier. I mean, Key and Peele, so iconic there. Separately, they're great as well, but they've done some stuff together, not just on the show, but they've done stuff like Keanu, one of their movies that they did a few years back there, which was pretty funny. So all things told, I'm going to go great tier. Wendy Williams show. Ooh, another one that we got to go at least bad tier for. It honestly could be bottom of the barrel, to tell you the truth, but it's not like as offensively bad as most of the other shows in there. It's just not like, it's obviously not trying to target someone like me. Like, I'm the total, you know, 180 opposite demo that they're trying to hit. So it's understandable why it wouldn't, you know, really appeal to someone like me. Kid Nation here. I know no one's going to believe me, but I did discover this show long before JonTron did, if you can believe it. So I'll put it at least in the good tier. Like, I mean, the concept of it is really unique and really interesting. It just wasn't executed very well. So maybe they could give this a shot again. This would be a show that I wouldn't hate to see a reboot of, because it'd be interesting to see what it would look like, you know, 15 years later. It came out in 2007. And a lot has changed in that time, so maybe CBS would want to try that. Kim's Convenience here, super overlooked sitcom from Canada. Again, this one I've mentioned before is like, why couldn't this show have gotten the treatment that Schitt's Creek got? You know, with all of its accolades and such. I'm gonna go a great tier here. Really like the first episode here, just very genuine. Very sweet show. It has a lot of heartwarming moments to it, but it can be super funny as well. Laugh out loud moments, all the same. King of the Hill here, definitely going to go on that tier with King of the Hill. That's a pretty unpopular opinion as well. Of course, one of the most dominant shows in its prime for sure, both as far as its critical reception and its, you know, commercial popularity there. But I've just never really, you know, gotten the hype for it. I really enjoy Mike Judge. A lot of his other shows like Beavis and Butthead, I think, are really funny, but King of the Hill just gets kind of repetitive for me, a little bit, you know, irritating at times. It's a little one-dimensional at times, is probably the best way I would describe it. Kipper here, another childhood show for me. I think this is a British show. I can't remember exactly what channel it was on, but for me, I'm gonna go good tier with it. It's just it's very simple. It's super simple. It barely has like any, you know, concrete story behind it or like, you know, theming to it. It's just these very simple kind of setups that they toy around with in this show. It's very much like Peppa Pig in that regard, which I've never seen Peppa Pig, but I've heard, you know, very mixed things about it. But Kipper was like our generation's Peppa Pig, and you know, it was good for what it was. It's not something you're gonna watch every single day, obviously, but you know, it can be enjoyable in small doses there. Kitchen Nightmares here, Gordon Ramsay, of course. Compared to Matt, I'm not as big on Kitchen Nightmares, but it certainly had its moments. I'll put it in the good tier as well. Definitely the US version, much better than the British version, that's all I'll say. The British version, I honestly think, is pretty unwatchable, but the US version had definitely its moments. Of course, Amy's Baking Company, probably the most infamous episode from the show, and that was a really fun one to see how that all unfolded, and to see the aftermath of it. It's pretty interesting. So all things told, I think good tier is a fair place for it. Knock Knock Live, man, I've been waiting to talk about this show because this had one of the dumbest moments in TV history. Decent idea, I suppose. Ryan Seacrest hosting this one. And it was essentially like this kind of variety show that they would do live. And the gimmick of it was they would go around these different suburbs of LA, and they would knock on people's doors, hence the title. And they would, answer questions, or they would have them do these little challenges or games and such. And it would just be like kind of a fun, heartwarming, feel-good type of show. And obviously it being live was, part of the gimmick of it. But there was one moment that I remember very fondly that just absolutely pissed me off because of how dumb and like, over the top it was. Went up to this guy and said, "We will shoot $25,000 in cash out of this armored truck that they had fucking, a fucking SEAL team around driving down the suburban streets of Los Angeles. If this guy can guess what this other guy's favorite baseball team is." They've been neighbors for like 20 years, right? And of course, dude they're asking is Hispanic and they live in LA. So what is he gonna say? He says the Dodgers. Guy doesn't even acknowledge if that's the correct answer or not, because he just wants the money. So he doesn't even say yes or no. And there's this weird pause for like a solid like 10 seconds there because it's live TV and they're not used to being live. Nods extremely vigorously to acknowledge that it's the right answer. And they don't even fact check it, don't say ahead of time anything. Out the money comes, and all these poor souls are on the concrete picking up these dollar bills. And it is just embarrassing to watch, Even for summer filler like this was, pretty low bar if you ask me. So I'm going to say bad tier. Hot Ones. Of course, one of the most popular YouTube shows on right now from the First We Feast channel. It took me a while to get into the kind of gimmick of Hot Ones and kind of see what all the hype was about. But once I did, absolutely a massive fan of it now. Definitely going A1 tier. Never miss an upload for sure. This is one of the shows that I look forward to every single week. La Brea here. I'm going to talk about this more in an upcoming video, but I'm going to say it's in the bad tier. I've already talked about it a little bit in the pilot project if you want to check that out. But yeah, this is just like objectively like terrible, VFX, terrible acting, terrible writing. It just feels so amateur in every category. And above all else, it's just the fact that it is as popular as it is almost makes me want to give the title very overrated, because it's the most popular new show of the whole season. It's bigger than Ghost. It was bigger than The Cleaning Lady. It was bigger than Abbott Elementary even, which is just mind-blowing. So this was the surprise hit of, the fall season, and it's coming back for season 2, and it was very, very quick on the draw with that because that's how, big it was. So, I mean, I guess I have some respect for it in that regard, but it just doesn't justify it, quality-wise, because it's just so awful. Last Comic Standing was basically, NBC's attempt to get into the American Idol game, but it's stand-up comedians as opposed to singers here. I think it was a decent show in its prime, but it's just not very sustainable is all, so I give it a good tier though. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver here. If you count this as a late night show, I mean, pretty much without question the best late night show out there. But, most people I think just know it from the kind of more informative segments and almost like the journalistic type of elements to it, where most people know it obviously for being like very political, talking about social issues and such, breaking down these very complex issues and kind of streamlining the most important points, for you to understand, and does so with obviously a lot of comedy in there and just being very personable, very, stand-up dude in general, John Oliver. So yeah, I mean, top tier it is. Scroll down here, it's getting harder because there's so many filling in this tier list here. Last Man Standing up next. I have the unpopular opinion that this is better than Home Improvement in almost every single way. I'm going to throw it in the great tier. I really am. It honestly would be higher if not for those last like 4 seasons or so when it transitioned to Fox. It basically became unwatchable. But those first like 5 or 6 are really, really solid there. Really, really good. Late Night with Conan O'Brien. I've never really been the biggest Conan fan, honestly. I think his shtick gets a little old after a while, but I do have some respect for him, so I'll put him in the good tier, kind of balance it out. It's interesting because, like, he, as in Conan, is probably the most respected as far as, like, the ability to transition into the new sort of mediums like YouTube and kind of the younger generations like me who probably didn't watch traditional late night TV as much as their parents. And so, I mean, he's been in the industry obviously for forever. So transitioning to late night to the Tonight Show and that whole debacle, and then his own show Conan, and then that was kind of the bridge between traditional mediums like TV and then the more you know, current mediums like YouTube and such. So he's gained a lot of respect for the sort of transitions that he's done, and from a wide variety of different demos and different ages. So, you know, I got to give him props there at least. So I'll put him in the good tier. All right, next up here we have the slew of all of the Law and Order shows here. Of course, some of my favorites. If you've seen my channel before, this is going to be pretty self-explanatory where all these goes, and I don't think I need to repeat myself like I've done with tons of my other videos here. But the OG, of course, is going in the God tier. Let's also throw Special Victims Unit next up there. Probably my favorite of all of these. It's going to be very interesting to see how the whole board looks when we're done with this, because it's going to be absolutely gigantic here. Organized Crime next up here. Definitely the most like sinister, the most dark of all these shows. Doesn't really feel like a Law and Order show whatsoever, but another one that we got to go in God tier. So those three are all phenomenal, and then we come to Criminal Intent here, and that one goes in bottom barrel. Get it the fuck out of here. You already know that show can kiss my ass. Lee Remini here. What was the subtitle? It's All Relative, that's right. Yeah, this is a reality show she did. Listen, I already gave my piece on King of Queens. Absolutely love it. I'm sorry, man. I had to check it out at some point. And you know what? I'll take my piece on this one and admit that it was not a good show. It was a phase, all right? It was a phase. I don't really like what she's doing now. I don't really care about any of her stuff now. She's had a few of these different reality shows and such. But yeah, I'll admit, not my best moments, but yeah, bad show for sure. The Leftovers as well. It's gonna piss a lot of people off comparing those two in the same tier, but dude, I just thought that first episode was so boring. I just could not get into it at all myself. So I'm sorry if it's your bag, but it is just not mine at all. Not a fan of it. Lego Masters here. Actually, I won't say this one is as bad. I'll put this in the meh tier. A decent idea, but it just, the execution of it is so ungodly realistic, you know, that they have 15 hours and on like a ridiculous amount of time, it seems like, just to work on Lego structures that whole time, you know. Yeah, I can't even imagine what the production of this show must look like, because that's got to be exhaustive as shit. So yeah, I'll say that here. Let's Dish here. This was a really, really old and kind of obscure cooking show with this dude Chris that would host it, and he was a culinary instructor, but he didn't act like it because he just came off very arrogant and just kind of egotistical at times, very goofy. You know, he'd make some decent stuff, so I'll put it in the good tier because it was definitely about the food first, you know, and that's always important when it comes to any of these cooking shows. But yeah, the host of this one just really kind of got under my skin at times, so can't put it too much higher than that. Let's Ask America. Really dumb game show, but I was always very good at it, way better than the contestants. Like, it was one of the easiest shows of all time, and yet these people were dumb as fuck. So just for the entertainment value that would give sometimes, I'll throw it in the meh tier. Lydia's Kitchen. We were actually just watching this the other day, me and my family. Another PBS show, another cooking show with the legendary Lydia Bastianich. Her son Joe was one of the judges on MasterChef. You might recognize him from, but yeah, another one I'll put in the good tier here. You kind of have to get past the fact that she's not going to be as personable and not as talkative because, you know, she's Italian, and obviously, you know, the language barrier kind of gets in the way at times, but she makes some pretty interesting stuff at times. It can be a little repetitive too because, you know, with most of these cooking shows, it's either we're going to do everything or we're going to do one specific, you know, type of food. We're going to focus in on one, you know, regional type of cuisine, and that's what she's going to do. She's going to do all Italian stuff. So there's going to be a lot of pasta and a lot of risotto and a lot of, you know, that kind of stuff. And you know, it's awesome because Italian food rocks, but it can get a little repetitive at times. You just kind of want to see her do something a little outside of the box that never really happens. So that's my biggest critique of it, but still pretty fun show. Life in Pieces. I just remember when this premiered, I was kind of curious, so I did watch a few episodes of the first season, but I just thought it was just a bad knockoff of Modern Family. This was just CBS's attempt to kind of reclaim some of that, and it just never was as successful, so I'm going to say Met here. Lilo and Stitch here. This is another childhood show for me, obviously on Disney here. Arguably the best Disney show out there for any of the cartoons. Me and Matt were certainly bigger fans of the movie that came out and like some of the direct-to-DVD or direct-to-VHS kind of, you know, specials that they would do at times. So all things considered, for a franchise, it's definitely in the great tier. We had a lot of fun with that growing up. Lingo here. They're apparently rebooting this, and if they make any comparisons to Wordle, I'm going to slap somebody because this show had been on way before Wordle was ever a thing, and it was pretty good. I'll put it in the good tier. It's essentially just exactly what it sounds like. It's a game show where they play Wordle, so, you know, nothing wrong with that. Lip Sync Battle. So I had not seen this show. I knew of this show, but I had never watched it for myself until I started doing the prep for this project because I was going through each individual channel and I would say, you know, everything on NBC. I'll just, you know, cherry pick out all the shows I've seen. And I go to, you know, Food Network and I'll just pick out all the shows. So I got to Spike, and the only show I recognized at first was Bar Rescue. I'd never seen, you know, well now it's Paramount Network, so I've never seen Yellowstone. I've never seen, you know, some of these other dramas they've done. And then I saw Lip Sync Battle, and I was like, well, I've heard of that, so let me see, you know, what this is all about. Let me see if I have seen any of these clips or not. And so in doing so, naturally, I did end up seeing a lot of these clips because I fell down a rabbit hole on YouTube because that's what you do with some of these shows. And it's pretty fun. There's a lot of, you know, recognizable faces. Obviously, you get a lot of big celebrities that come out and do the show. A lot of TV personalities that'll do it. So I saw people like Kaylee Cuoco and Lauren Cohen from The Walking Dead was on there, which is really fun. She did Gloria Gaynor as hers, which is pretty fun. Tom Holland was super famous for his performance, I guess you could say. Neil Patrick Harris did Michael Jackson. That was pretty cool. So all in all, like, you know, it works better in small doses like that as, like, you know, a YouTube clip you can just show somebody. The idea of sitting down and watching a full episode is not, you know, the most ideal in my opinion, but it can be fun in small doses. So I'll put it in the good tier. Lizzie McGuire here, of course, Hilary Duff here. This is her first role that she was really notable for. Another one I'll put in good. Didn't watch it as much as obviously the Nickelodeon stuff, but it had its moments, so good tier it goes. Let's Make a Deal here. I don't know if I've ever given my piece on Let's Make a Deal, but as you can tell, going in the bad tier, it's just not for me, admittedly. Like, it's the gimmick is either you have these goofy ass costumes and that's how people, you know, get recognized and get put on the show, which is just dumb in its own right, but also just like there's no skill involved. There's no, like, you know, you don't need knowledge of anything. You don't need to, you know, understand these concepts. It's just like, would you rather have $500 or whatever's behind door number 1, you know? That's the whole gimmick of the show. So, like, you can't really play along with it if you're watching at home. The zoinks, they get old really quick. Like, I don't know, there's not really that much here that's, you know, worth rewatching. There's like no replay value with this one at all for me. So I'm gonna throw in the bad tier. It doesn't really check any of the boxes that a good game show should. and you know, that's definitely a big critique with it. CSI Vegas, I'll put it in the good tier. I mean, I have a lot of respect for this show because CSI is just a massive franchise, even though it's never really been my thing. I'm definitely more the Law and Order guy, as you saw earlier, but the franchise as a whole, I think, is almost like too big to fail at this point, because even a show like this, in the time where everyone's against reboots and stuff, did, you know, respectable numbers and such, and it is getting a season 2. So, like, even in this sort of climate where people are like, we want new and original IPs and such, a show like CSI can still put up really good, you know, ratings like that. Then that tells me that the franchise is still very strong and there is still a big audience for it. So I got to give, you know, props there for sure. Looney Tunes here. You cannot go wrong with Looney Tunes. It's so iconic, so classic. You got Bugs Bunny, of course, in the thumbnail there. Some of those segments, some of the most famous from the series here. But yeah, we're definitely going to go up in the great tier with Looney Tunes there. If you were a Cartoon Network kid growing up, I mean, you watched a ton of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. They would play those like almost all the time. Before they had just an infinite marathon of Teen Titans Go, it was Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry there. So that's where we got our fix of those for sure. Lost, I'll put Lost in the good tier. It's definitely something that I do want to see more of, but I've just heard so many negative things about the ending of the show, so it's kind of like questionable if you know, want to pursue it, if it's worth justifying so much time putting into it only for the ending to kind of be a little less than, you know, a little less than par. So but from what I've seen, I do really enjoy the show. Loving Spoonfuls here, dude, this is one of the worst cooking shows of all time. Actually, you know what, now bad is too generous. We got to go bottom of the barrel, dude. This show is so god awful. This dude literally just goes around to random people's houses and just like cooks with these grandmas and shit, and they just do a ton of dancing. I don't know why there's so much dancing. They're always dancing for some reason, and it is just so uncomfortable. It's so fucking god awful. The food they make looks absolutely disgusting. Like, you couldn't pay me enough to put that shit in my mouth. So yeah. Same thing with Lucky Louie here, dog. We should have saw it coming, man, because there's a very infamous scene from this show where Louis C.K. just has his fucking cock and balls out, and you see it all, man. And there's kids on the show, and like, no, you know what, no, I've said too much already. Get it out of here, bottom of the barrel. The FBI is going to be knocking on my door trying to find the Louis C.K. pics off my laptop soon, I swear to God. Mad. Let's go to something more positive here. Mad on Cartoon Network here. Ton of fun for sure. Obviously has that, you know, spoof parody type of thing going on with it, which is a ton of fun in small doses like this. Kind of has, you know, a sketch comedy feel to it as well. All in all, I'd say good tier for sure. Mad Men here, legendary drama, of course, from AMC there. I mean, even before Breaking Bad and The Walking Dead and Better Call Saul and all those, Mad Men was the OG in that regard, coming out in 2007, a year before Breaking Bad, and absolutely just tearing up the game here with how just, you know, mature and, you know, stylish it was with, you know, the costumes and the production, and, you know, taking place in the 60s, of course, kind of has that retro feel to it. Just all in all, a really, really spectacular drama. Definitely got to go A1 tier. MASH here, classic sitcom, of course, from the 70s. I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to say good tier. It's definitely not my thing, but you can't count out that finale, man. The highest viewed finale of all time there, 120 million people. I mean, that alone, just as someone who just, like, respects the hell out of the medium of TV and just, you know, the art of TV, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. You really can't go without saying any good things about the MASH finale there in that regard. So for that alone, I'll put it in a good tier, but it's just not really my thing as far as like the quality goes. It's very dated, I feel like. There's a lot of references that are just, you know, so past, you know, at this point, like, you know, being relevant and such. So I don't know. I don't think it's held up as well as a lot of the other sitcoms of its time, but again, for the finale and just the kind of legacy it holds, we'll say good tier. Magic's biggest secrets finally revealed. I'm a big Magic guy. I like watching Magic shows, and this is a pretty good one. I'll put it in good tier. It's not as good as like Penn and Teller, because Penn and Teller always have like, you know, some comedy, some humor to kind of break up the monotony of it, but this was just played really straight. But it was very interesting to see sometimes the lengths that these people would go to perform these tricks and like what it would take to kind of pull some of these things off. It was pretty elaborate, so that was always pretty fascinating to see. All right, another one I've been waiting to talk about here is majority rules. I don't think there's a single person out here that will agree with me on this, even if they have seen the show, which I doubt many of you have, because it's so obscure and, you know, so forgotten about. But I'm throwing this one in A1 tier, and you can't stop me from doing it, because it's a lot of fun, man. I mean, obviously the novelty of it is what's going to put it up this high, because Tracy Spiridonkos being on PD now, and, you know, kind of the rise and fame that she's had over the past 10 years or so, and getting her start on this, which was like a little, you know, kids teen sitcom that aired on Teletoon, which is Canadian Cartoon Network, and having this like style that was very similar to like a Out of Jimmy's Head sort of thing, which is another Cartoon Network show that people just absolutely despise, right? They just hate that show, and they hate Majority Rules because it has kind of the half and half styling of a live action show and an animated, half live action, half cartoons, and that's kind of the thematics of it and the sort of you know, styling of it. But what's really interesting about this show is still to this day how, from what I've seen at least, all these people that were on the show still keep in touch, and it's been a pretty big leap for most of these cast members that got their start on the show, not just Tracy Spiridonkos, but so many of the other ones that have gone on to do just huge dramas or huge you know, movie roles and such, and kind of being the springboard for them, which is really interesting to see. So, I mean, all things told, I really have nothing negative to say, because I could binge the show, you know, infinitely. I really do enjoy it, unironically, but obviously the novelty and stuff is, you know, what's putting it up as high. So yeah, I'll say A1 tier for sure. Following that, we got another classic here from the 2000s, Malcolm in the Middle. Another one that has just an absolutely ravenous fan base here. I'm going to put it in the great tier. I really have nothing bad to say about Malcolm. It's just not something I've seen all that much of, at least for now. You know, I've seen a small handful of episodes here and there, but it's not something that I've sat down and watched through the entire show of. So I think good tier, or great tier rather, is appropriate. Mama's Family. Whenever people like, or I talk about this show with people, it's always like, this is the Two Broke Girls of the 80s. This is the one sitcom that everyone hates for some reason that I will defend, because I really like Vicki Lawrence, right? So I'll say great tier for sure. Man with a Plan. Matt LeBlanc here. This, what Kevin Can Wait was for the King of Queens, and, you know, for Kevin James's career, this was to Matt LeBlanc what that was for Kevin James, and it just doesn't really have that much staying power, honestly. It feels pretty, I don't know, it's not even average. It's just like so dated, you know, even though it's not even that old. Like the theming and sort of the format of it feels very dated. It's trying so hard to put Matt LeBlanc back on the map and kind of put him back the center focus, and it's just like, Friends was 30 years ago, man. Like, that you're past your prime, you know. Just retire already. That's all you need to do, man. Those royalties will come in. So there was no real reason to make this show, which is partly why I just don't really like it. So I'll just say Matt here. Man vs. Food, on the other hand, was a fantastic show, and y'all can't stop me from putting it all the way up in the God tier, because it deserves it. Get it up there. There we go. Yeah, I mean, competitive eating, I talked about earlier, is like just absolutely huge now, and speed eating with people like Matt Stoney, of course, but Adam Richman, man, the OG for sure, going around taking on these insane challenges there. The new seasons after he left with Casey Webb definitely just are not as good. I mean, Casey Webb just sucks. He just sucks as a competitive eater. He can't eat. The most impressive one that he's done is like a 4-pound sandwich, where Adam would take on like these 6, 7, 8-pound, platters of food in any capacity, and he would knock those out. So they really had to scale down the challenges. Casey Webb now does a lot of the spicy ones, which are, I guess, easier because it's, not a quantity of stuff, but even still, those seasons are definitely very disappointing. But those OG, 1 through 3 are iconic. I was a huge fan of the show that when he went to Ann Arbor and he got the huge 5-pound nacho platter, I convinced everyone to go there eventually. So we got a group of my friends and everything to go. And I don't remember what we were doing in Ann Arbor that day or like why we decided to go. But we were all big fans of the show, and we got that platter, and it was delicious. So shout out to that Mexican restaurant in Ann Arbor. Married with Children, another super iconic 80s and 90s sitcom here with Ed O'Neill, of course, as the lead. Between good and great, another one that kind of rides that line, but you know what? Yeah, fuck it. Let's put it in the great tier because, I mean, the legacy of it, you really can't hold it against them. Really was another springboard for a lot of these people as well, not just Ed O'Neill, but a lot of people that were on the show. Katie Siegel, of course, arguably one of the most famous TV actresses, just period. Like, I mean, the variety of stuff that she's done now following Married with Children is phenomenal. So just for that alone, we're definitely going great tier. Martha Speaks, I don't know. This is definitely more Matt's thing. I'll put it in Matt. I won't be too harsh on it, but it's just, for a PBS kids show, there's just so many better options, I don't think it's worth wasting your time on it. Next up is the slew of MasterChef shows. We got MasterChef Junior starting us off here very strong, going all the way up in the A1 tier. I haven't seen the new season yet, although I heard good things, of course, because it took a big hiatus because of COVID. So this is the what is it, the 8th season or something? Hasn't been on news since 2019, so it's been a few years now. The OG MasterChef, in its prime, was probably the best cooking show on TV. I mean, seasons 2 through like 6, I think were some of the best TV seasons of all time, man. For any cooking show, for any reality show, like so many memorable contestants and so many memorable moments, of course, with those judges, the iconic slate of judges there between Gordon Ramsay, Graham Elliott, and Joe Bastianich. Like, any show that kind of has tapped into the American Idol format of having the 3 judges, of course, those 3 arguably for their respective show were the best for any, competition reality show out there. So is my piece on it. And then we got MasterChef USA here, which is definitely going to go in the bad tier. Totally different style. This one came out way before the Gordon Ramsay show, so it doesn't really have much relation to it. But it's a PBS show, and it is the most just like by the numbers, straight-edged cooking show I've ever seen. There's no personality here. There is no theming to it. There's no, tension with like the contestants or anything. I mean, it is the most bland and boring cooking show I've ever seen in my life. It is just ungodly boring. Yeah, I mean, even for PBS standards, because PBS can do cooking shows quite well, but this was not one of their best by a long shot. So bad tier. Masters of Illusion, it's another magic show. This one, it just, again, doesn't have much personality whatsoever, so we're going bad tier. Match Game here. This is a iconic game show from the 70s, of course. Gene Rayburn there as the host. I'm going to put it in good tier. Honestly, if not for where I work, because some of the coworkers I have really enjoy Match Game, and it's always on. Like, there's this channel that just plays it constantly called Buzzer, which they play old game shows like Match Game and Family Feud and such. And there's a group of, older coworkers that I have that just absolutely love these shows. So it's always on at work. And, for what it's worth, sometimes it can get a little repetitive, but every once in a while it's cool to come in and, watch it for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. Another one that works in small doses, like most game shows. So. Maury here, Maury Povich, of course. I actually kind of like this show more than most paternity shows, so I'll put this in the good tier. This is definitely one that's like birthed like so many memes and compilations on YouTube. Of course, the best reactions. Of course, I would honestly go down and argue that "You are not the father" or "You are the father" is probably one of the most iconic quotes like from any show ever. If you were just make like a top 100 list, like that would have to be on there somewhere just for its impact, in like meme culture and such. So we got to go at least good tier. But like no, the idea of watching a whole episode is just terrible. Like the screaming matches they have and shit. But no, just for the memes, I'll put it up there because the show itself is pretty bad. Otherwise. Max and Ruby here. I've seen some TikToks recently about this dude who just absolutely hates Ruby on this show, just absolutely just fucking roast the shit out of her, which is hilarious. Because she was kind of a bitch low-key to Max. I'll put it in the good tier though. Like it had its moments, but another like childhood show that didn't have the staying power that you maybe wanted it to. I think this was Treehouse, and Treehouse always did really, really great, kids, entertainment, animation type stuff. And, my favorite of them for sure is the Berenstain Bears. But Max and Ruby was definitely up there. We saw a lot of it. They would always have like collections and such on DVD where they'd have multiple of their shows together, a handful of episodes from each show. So we saw a lot of Max and Ruby through that, just in correlation with a lot of their other shows that the production company had. So that's kind of my take on it there. The Cleaning Lady here, another one that I've talked about so much. It's cool that it's been as big as it is, and a lot of people are hoping for a second season. So if it does happen, that'll be nice for them. But for me, crime dramas, they're very hit or miss, and this is just not one that did it for me. So admittedly so. Crowded here. I need to rewatch this show because I did watch it growing up when it came out in like 2013, but I really don't remember that much of it. But the most notable aspect to it is Miranda Cosgrove and Patrick Warburton were the two leads here. And it's just so funny because this is just like an NBC filler sitcom that they did, in 2013, which is so random. Which is ironically when their other shows, iCarly and Rules of Engagement, both had ended at that point. So I guess they just needed a job, huh? But yeah, I'll say Matt here. Mayans MC, of course, the spinoff to Sons of Anarchy here. Very popular right now as it's airing its 4th season. I'll put this in the good tier. If I had seen more of it, or if I do watch more of it, I'll probably like it more. This just seems like a show that would just grow on you, the more that you see it. So from what I've actually watched of it, it's pretty solid, but I just haven't seen enough of it to really put it any higher. Mercy Street here. This is another one I've talked about endlessly. Matt here, a hospital drama set during the Civil War. That's pretty interesting, but just not really, something that's going to attract someone like me. Detroiters here. Yeah, I'll say good tier is fine. Tim Robinson, Sam Richardson, do a lot of stuff together, and they've done better, but they've done worse than this too. So kind of just balances itself out somewhere in the middle there. Mike and Molly, on the other hand, is going way higher, as this is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time here, as you guys know. And I just scoot this one up all the way to the top tier here and go God tier for sure. Vince, of course, on the show, my favorite character. I absolutely cannot get enough of that guy. What a legend. $1 Million Money Drop here, another game show we got. As far as like, being able to play along with it, it's just basic trivia, so you can. But man, this show is very infamous because there's been so many instances of them, as in the production, getting their own questions wrong and misleading the contestants into thinking they got it right or wrong when they didn't, and just costing them so much. And I don't know, like, I guess on principle that makes it bad, but it doesn't really affect the quality of it because, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't, have any reason to question it, So just taking it at its face value, it's just a pretty middle of the road, just trivia show with the gimmick of these people have so much cash in front of them and they gotta, you know, rapidly put it on their platforms and such. But outside of that, it's just basic trivia. So Matt's here. The million-second quiz. This was an interesting idea for a show, another game show, but another one that just kind of wasn't executed as well as it could have been. Trivia that lasts 1,000,000 seconds, which is like a week and a half in real time, and played King of the Hill style. So one person is the challenger, one person, is in control essentially. And as long as the person in control keeps getting the questions right, they stay in control for as long as they can. And until they get one wrong and the challenger gets it right, then they take over. And the person that stays in control the longest wins as much money as they've accumulated throughout their reign, on the show. And I think the total amount was like 2.2 million or something. And the guy that won it was from my hometown, Farmington Hills, if you can believe it or not, Andrew something. He's one of the biggest winners of any game show ever, like up there with like Ken Jennings and stuff, because he won $2 million from this show. But see, here's the problem with it though, is like watching it as a TV show, you could live stream it on NBC.com if you wanted to the whole way through for a week and a half straight, or they would play an hour's worth of it every night for a week and a half, and they would basically just give you the highlights of what happened that day. And watching it that way just feels like you're missing out on so much stuff, because there's only so much you can put in an hour, and it would change hands a lot. So the idea of watching it live is probably something that would better be executed nowadays, because that's a little bit more relevant. I could see this working if they did it as like a Twitch stream. Now, I mean, there'd be people that would watch it for a week and a half straight. There's some dedicated people out there. But back in like 2012 when they tried this, or 2013, whenever, it was a little just too much to take in all at once. So a decent idea though, that probably should be revisited at some point. Minefield here with Michael Stevens from Vsauce, of course, his YouTube premium show. And just like Vsauce, I think this one is fantastic. It's Vsauce with a higher budget, so can't really go wrong there. Yeah, let's go A1 tier for sure. That's where Vsauce is. So put those next to each other there. There we go. Yeah, great show. What do we have next up? Mind Games here. Christian Slater and Steve Zahn on this one. I watched it as a kid, but I couldn't tell you a single thing that happens in this show. So pretty forgettable. I'm going to put it in the med tier. Minute to Win It here with Guy Fieri, if you can believe that, another game show. It was okay, I guess. I do remember there was like the NBC version that was an hour, that was with Guy Fieri, and then the syndicated version, which I never saw, but that version just seemed like it really didn't have the I don't know, the dramatic element to it that this show needed, because the challenges were so simple, It's like, can you contort your face to put an Oreo in your mouth in 60 seconds, and how to make that interesting was kind of the amazing thing about this show. So sometimes it was able to, sometimes it wasn't, so just kind of balancing it out here in the Met here. Miranda here, of course, the kind of originator to Call Me Kat, the show that's based off of. I'm gonna say it's in good tier. I mean, it's not like gonna set the world on fire, but it's way better than Call Me Kat. So if you want something like that, just watch Miranda. Mr. Rogers here. I'll say good tier. Actually, you know what? No, we'll put it in good. Put it in the great tier. I mean, it's pretty iconic. It's the legacy behind it is deserving of a decent tier. So put it in the great tier there. Mixed-ish here. The spinoff to Blackish. Yeah, I think that tier is okay. I mean, shout out to Gary Cole, of course, one of the best actors of all time. But yeah, the Blackish sort of franchise, I guess you could say at this point, has just totally ran itself into the ground. And there's so many spinoffs. There's this and the Grownish, and there's one that they're developing right now called Oldish. And like, I don't know, man. They squander their potential so much that at this point it's like, why are they even trying? There isn't really a lot of gas left in this tank. So, and that's kind of how I feel about this show. Mixology, terrible. Oh my god, absolutely awful, man. Actually, you know what? No, that's too generous. We got to go bottom of the barrel with this one. There was an old website that me and Matt used to write reviews on called Common Sense Media, and he actually still does, I believe. But it was essentially like if you ever see the Parent Teacher Council, or Parent Television Council rather, that old website that was kind of dictating, what was appropriate and not for young kids to watch. And CSM was kind of an equivalent of that, but they would allow you to do reviews on there if you were logged in and you had an account and everything. And they would have a very simple system of 1 to 5 stars. And this was one of the only, if not the only, TV show I remember back in the day that I saw that I made a review for that was 1 star, and it was very apparent that it was 1 star because this show just absolutely sucked. So get it out of here. Power Rangers here, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to be more specific. All the Power Rangers franchises were awesome. My favorite was SPD, but Mighty Morphin was great too. I mean, that was the original one, of course. Yeah, I'll say great tier for sure. I don't even know. I think they still do make Power Rangers, but I can't imagine it's as good as it once was. I think it's on like Nickelodeon or something, or maybe Netflix. Actually, I thought I heard that they moved it to Netflix, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, whenever, like, any of the seasons where they only had 3 felt like it wasn't enough. They needed 5. They needed 5 to make it work. So all the OG seasons had 5, but when they knocked it down to 3, it was just, I don't know, it just lost something, Mob City here, this is just pretty middle of the road, pretty, whatever. It's a decent crime drama at its core. It has a lot of connections to The Walking Dead, so that's why I wanted to check it out. But yeah, it's pretty forgettable. It only lasted 1 season for a reason, because it just wasn't very sustainable. This show, on the other hand, Modern Family, was the total opposite of that. Extremely sustainable. One of the best, longest running sitcoms out there. Another unpopular opinion with this is that the later seasons were very good as well, just as much as the earlier seasons there. I mean, it's my second favorite show of all time, so how could it go any lower than that? Moesha here, with Brandy, of course, as the host, or not the host, but the lead character, rather. I'll say Matt here with this. I mean, it's okay, but again, it's not trying to target someone like me, so can't really blame it and, thinking that it's not the best. Mom, one of Chuck Lorre's bigger shows on this one with Anna Faris and Allison Janney. I'll put this in the good tier. I've seen, a handful of episodes here and there. It's one of those shows that I do think is a little overrated because it tried to be like kind of dark and have like these kind of real world themes to it at times, and kind of implementing these darker storylines and such, like them being in a 12-step program and stuff, and being alcoholics and stuff. That was kind of like the kind of root of the show at the beginning. And, for a comedy, it just kind of got a little too involved with that sort of theme and that sort of tone. It would have been nice if they pulled some of that back at times and just kind of made it a little more, lively and fun at times. So that's my biggest critique of it. Monopoly Millionaires Club, another game show here based on Monopoly this time, hosted by Billy Gardell of Mike and Molly. I'll put this in good, honestly. I enjoyed this show. I think it was on for 2 seasons. The first season was just kind of whatever. It had a lot of potential, but they really needed to kind of, tinker some of the details of it. And then season 2 came out, and it was a lot better with season 2. They realized like where some of the problems were and kind of the little formats that they could change up to make it a little more smooth and streamline it a little bit. And then I think at that point it became pretty solid and pretty fun to watch. So good tier it goes. Monster Quest, very similar to like Destination Truth we talked about earlier, with hunting down these cryptoids and stuff. It's okay. It's not as good as some of those other shows, but they're all kind of in the same boat. They're only going to be as good as you like, as much interest as you have in this type of subject. If you are really into Bigfoot, it's going to be a good show for you. But if you're not, then I would stay away. Moral Oral here, Adult Swim, one of their, I guess you could say more popular ones. It has some name recognition, I guess. It's between meh and good, but the one episode I saw, I thought it was okay. I was gonna put it on my pilot project, but I had to trim it to 250, so there was some overstock there that I just had to cut out, and this was one of them. But yeah, I really wouldn't have that much to say on it anyway, but it was a decent episode. Next up, Californication here. This is one of Matt's favorite shows at the moment. He's been watching through this one. I've seen a couple episodes so far with him because we've been watching it over dinner for the last couple of weeks. I think it's good, but I hadn't seen enough of it to really do a fair assessment of it yet. So I know a lot of people, argue it's one of the more kind of overlooked dramas as far as like premium, cable goes, like because it was on Showtime. So it definitely gets kind of overshadowed by a Dexter or like a, I don't know, Sopranos or something like that on HBO. But it can hold its own at times. David Duchovny, a really, really solid casting choice there, of course, from X-Files, more famous for. But yeah, decent show for sure. It has a good balance between drama and comedy as well. Watch Mojo UK. I'm going to say meh here because most of the topics are too specific for me, and I'm just not familiar with most of the stuff they talk about because it's British culture. So yeah, it doesn't really do much for me in that regard. But there's some music topics that I think are okay. So that's the main reason I'd watch it. Mr. Bean here. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Mr. Bean, so we gotta put this relatively high. I'm gonna put it in the great tier, I think. Obviously, the amazing aspect to it is like how universal it is, because there's very little dialogue in the show. It's mostly just like physical comedy and like sight gags and stuff, and that's really impressive because it's been, put in syndication in like 100 and something countries, like 150 different countries. And they don't need to do any altering to it, if anything at all, because there's hardly any dialogue, so there doesn't need to be any translation. And that's the biggest sort of handicap with comedy in general, is how they translate. That's why a lot of movies nowadays, you don't really see comedies like you used to, because a lot of movies now rely on foreign markets and stuff to be profitable, and they just can't do it with the way that PC culture has kind of come in, and if it doesn't translate well, then it's just not going to be very effective. But Mr. Bean is one of those rare examples of a show or any type of media really that has been able to do it so successfully, because it's all physical comedy, which is the most universal form. So that's why a show like I Love Lucy has lasted for as long as it has as well. So, Mr. Iglesias, with Gabriel Iglesias, of course, on Netflix here. I'm a fan of him for sure. I don't think this was really the best kind of format for him. I just prefer his stand-up, honestly, but it's a good show regardless. If you're a fan of Gabriel Iglesias, you're going to like it for sure. Mr. Pickles here, another one that's very similar to Moral Oral there, as far as like how its reception has gone. I think it's meh here. Like, it's not as bad as a lot of people want to claim, but it's definitely, it could be better for sure. I think it did have a spin-off, if I remember correctly, which I've never seen, but that kind of impresses me that there was enough of a demand for it. So take that for what you will, I guess. Mr. Mayor here, bottom of the barrel. Get it out of here, trash. I mean, it's easily the worst thing that Ted Danson has ever done, and it sucks because this is like his current show. I mean, coming off of Cheers and The Good Place and such, I mean, the dude's a legend, and Becker as well, and then just bowing down to something like this, it's trying so hard to be like hip and cool, but it just feels so out of place. It feels so out of touch with what's relevant and such. And no, the rhyme there was unintentional. And it's also written by Tina Fey, which is amazing to me because she's usually very good at anything that she's done on SNL, of course. But yeah, I just can't really find the chemistry here with any of these characters. I mean, Moynihan is on this show, another SNL alum, and he as well just feels so out of place. Like, I don't know, man. There's so many things about this show that I want to like, and I want to, you know, say it's something good that you should check out given its cast and everything. But it's just, the execution is so bad. It's so bad. So I hope it gets canceled because it definitely did not deserve a season 2. So I'm rooting for this one, honestly, to get axed because that way more people do not have to put up with this shit. The needle drop here, of course, Fantano on YouTube, probably the most famous music critic of all time now, you know, given his platform and such. I would put him in the good tier. You know, obviously as someone who critiques music occasionally on this channel myself, I do have respect for it as far as just like the platform that he's been able to build. The biggest issue, just in terms of his particular formatting and style, is that he very famously does not play any clips or does not use any copyrighted material in his music, or in his videos rather, which is partially why he's been able to be as successful as he is. But if you're not familiar with the album in question that he's talking about, you will be extremely lost, especially if it's a very underground artist. So that is his biggest hurdle, because most of his popular reviews and most of the reviews that you probably know him from are from just huge names like Kendrick or, you know, Green Day or 21 Pilots or someone like that. And 90% of his videos are not going to be albums like that because, you know, they might only put an album out every 3 or 4 years. So he's got to fill the rest of that time with very low-key, very underground, very, you know, small bands. And the fact that he just does not play any of the clips or any of the songs in his videos just leaves a big question mark, especially if you're just not familiar with them. So in that regard, that's definitely going to dock him some points there. I'll say good tier. Well, you know, because you can't really put him any higher. All right. We've been going for a little over an hour here, so I think we're going to wrap it up with this one last show here. We'll talk about special skills here, because this show is fantastic. This is a God tier show. And like, I wouldn't be, you know, that surprised if many of you don't know what this is, because it's very, very obscure. It's very obscure. And unless you're kind of in the know with the community behind this show, it's very unlikely that you've ever seen it for yourself. When I went to research it before I actually saw it, it does have an IMDb page, believe it or not, 7.5, which is very, very good and, you know, justifiable. But it only had 17 reviews, which is probably the lowest amount of actual reviews I've seen, because that's how, you know, low key and underground it is. But I will say, if you are tapped in with it and you know me and how I am and the shows that I like to watch, specifically a show like this, it should be very obvious as to why I enjoy a show like Special Skills. So that's all I'll say, because I plan on talking about it more in depth in an upcoming video. So my friends, that is part 4 to the every TV show I've seen at tier list. I hope you guys did enjoy this part of it. Believe me, we have much more to go here. We'll probably do at least 2 or 3 more of these videos, so that will give us to about 6 or 7 total here before we conclude at this tier list. But so far, I am really enjoying this one, getting able to just kind of go through and discuss all of these great and sometimes not so great shows. Definitely leave a comment letting me know what some of your favorites are. And with that, we will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.